How could the state budget process impact your child's education? I'm Jill Horner. This is Comcast Newsmakers. With me this hour is Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Ross. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me back, Jill.
Really two different components when we're talking about education funding in Pennsylvania. Let's start by talking about K-12 education funding and that basic ed subsidy and some of the other funding issues that go along with that. We're talking about a reduction in the amount spent. Talk to us about what that will mean and why a cut is being made at this point.
Well, Jill, the governor has made a proposal, and of course it'll be vetted carefully by our Appropriations Committee and probably adjusted to some degree. But basically, as you know, last year and the year before we had $1 billion of federal stimulus dollars to help with K-12 education. That's not available any longer. We knew it was a 2-year program that was going to expire this year to help us get over the recession. Unfortunately, the state revenues haven't come back anywhere as near to the level they were before the recession started. So we have kind of a predictable crash here in K-12. And in fact, the governor has suggested about a 9 to 9.5% reduction in basic education funding. He's flatlined the special education supplement and then wiped out a couple of other assistance programs that the schools got. And just to put it into context for my districts, the best that any of them did was about a 1.5% cut to their total budget from the loss of that state aid. Some of them maybe are going to be as much as looking at about a 5% reduction in revenue of their total budget. The state portion winding up contributing somewhere between a third to a half of their total budget.
Does that put additional pressure, though, on local property taxpayers? Will
it can.
Their property taxes go up?
Obviously, the two options are for people to increase property taxes or to try and soften this blow by savings. And we're going to try and help as much as possible by looking at mandates that drive up the administrative cost of the school districts to try and help them reduce their costs. And I hope also that the teachers will seriously consider the governor's proposal to hold their salaries steady over a year and maybe forego an increase. I think all of us in state government, myself included, need to do that this year.
So let's focus on the other component, because this is a separate issue and sometimes they're put together under one umbrella.
Right.
But we're talking about higher education funding, and the governor has proposed around a 52% cut for certain schools in Pennsylvania. Give us an idea as to the schools included and what kind of impact this size of a cut will have on them and on educating that next generation of college students.
Right. This one is a little more troubling to me because unlike the K-12, we actually have not had the same level of additional support for the colleges that we support. And they include the state-related, as they're known, Penn State, Pitt, Temple, Lincoln, and the state system in my area. That includes Westchester, Westchester, Cheney, and some of the other schools. And a 52% cut in state aid is very substantial. Obviously, Penn State is an enormous institution with many sources of revenue. It winds up being 160-some million, I think, for them. But it's even more devastating perhaps to a Westchester or to a Lincoln who have fewer resources and an awful lot to swallow in 1 year, particularly after they haven't had substantial increases as the K-12 system has in previous years. That I'm worried about, and I think we're going to have to look very carefully at those kinds of cuts and see if we can't maybe pull them back a little bit.
Does this also create a level of uncertainty for students as they're working to make the decision about where they're going to go in the fall?
Couldn't really have come at a worse time, probably, because here we are in March and many of them are going to be making their decisions as to where to go to school, and it throws a level of uncertainty for someone thinking, the next 4 years, am I going to a school that's going to be really pulling back on programs? So I think we've got to try and see if we can't work with the colleges and universities to try and mitigate the effects of this.
Are there additional sources of revenue that can be used to work to plug some of these holes, particularly when it comes to higher education funding from the state?
Well, I think we're going to initially look at trying to shift some monies within the budget. Welfare in particular is an area where the Auditor General indicated there might be as much as $1 billion. And we'll look at other sources and opportunities and again try and rationalize this and reduce the pain as much as possible.
Thanks so much. We've been talking to Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Ross. I'm Jill Horner.